Hey, what's up, everyone out there? Thank you so much for tuning into another Addicted Fishing podcast. We got a fiery one for you tonight, probably a little bit.
No, it's not going to be fiery. It's going to be very factual. It's going to be very informative. It's going to be very, maybe not, I'm going to just say deep in the thought processes of what's going on the North Coast for steelhead for Washington. But before your eyes glaze over and you think about turning off this podcast, don't forget that what's going on the North Coast of the Washington state right now will affect every steelheader in the Northwest in one way,
every steelheader in the
another.
Entire world that likes to go steelhead fishing as a destination. You know, right. At the end of the day, that North Coast is somewhere that people travel all over the world to go fish.
Well, they used to, until they shut it down. Which, by the way, last week we were putting beautiful wild steelhead in a broodstock tank in April.
Yeah, that was amazing. Before we get too far into this podcast, we got to give a huge shout out to Filet Away Fish Mats. As you guys know, Filet Away is one of our sponsors, and they're sponsoring today's podcast. And with that sponsorship, they're giving all you addicts out there a 15% off discount code. All you got to do, ADX15 on Filet Away's website. Go get yourself a couple mats. We all use them. We all love them.
And in fact, even last week, while we were putting those broodstock fish in the tank, we were also catching beautiful sea-liced hatchery steelhead that we filmed for you guys and promptly filleted them out on Filet Away fish mats. Yes. There's the segue. Got it. Boom.
Got it. And with tonight, we also have a guest in here. You want to introduce yourself?
The guest. The man.
Robert Kratzer, Anglers Guide Service, a longtime resident of Forks, Washington, and longtime fishing guide in the state of Washington. And just a good, also a sport advocate person for all the sportsmen out there that like fishing.
Probably one of the hardest working sport advocates we have, and thankful to have in the state of Washington. But like I said before, it affects all steelheaders, because I'd imagine some of those Oregon rivers are getting a little busier than they are used to.
I know down
some
here
of the thought process from some of these wild fish groups, some of the thought process that they're, as far as the no fishing from boats, that popped up in Oregon last year. It was quickly stifled down because, with the broodstock programs, they don't really need to worry about that. But, so we brought Bob in here because we're sitting on the cusp of another very important ad hoc North Coast Steelheaders meeting on April 28th. And we wanted to give you guys, we brought Bob in. He's doing some fishing down here. We brought him in because we wanted to give kind of the setup and the layout and the importance of these North Coast Steelheader meetings, or I shouldn't say Steelheader, or I should say North Coast Steelhead Advisory Group meetings. Yeah. Is that what it is? What's the actual terminology?
Coastal Advisory Committee.
Coastal Advisory Committee. Coastal Steelhead Advisory Committee. There we go. But I got one coming up next Thursday.
This is meeting number 2, correct?
Number 3.
Number 3.
Yeah, we kind of went through the first 2 meetings. The first one was nothing more than just a introduction to the group, how everything works. Second one was kind of the setup of how we're going to start looking at all this stuff. This next one coming up on the 3rd, we're going to start digging into the grassroots a little bit on the Chehalis system. So mostly Chehalis, Grays Harbor areas will be the discussion
outside people
on this
listen?
Next one.
Is there a place so people can join in on this? How do they do that?
You just go to the website and there's a link there. Get forecast for when the meeting's going to be. There's a link there for a Zoom. And people can get on the Zoom. Your cameras are turned off so that we can't see you, and you can't speak until the end of the meeting. They do give a short comment period for the public, and then there's also, they'll put on there at the end that you can make comments to the actual group and everything. And it's good because then all the people in the group get to go read those comments and see how people are feeling and what they think about, what we talked about and stuff, which I think is really good. Sad thing is that, I've talked about this now a couple of times. There's very few comments. On the website.
Yeah, we're gonna
nobody's really commenting on it. And so
we need to change that, addicts.
That's why we're talking to you guys. Let's talk about why we're here and how this group formed. Because I think people, if they're just tuning into this podcast, they've heard about this, but what was the necessity of the group? Who formed the group? Who put the people on this group, and what's the end goal? Like I know in the in the short version. Sorry,
I mean, to kind of break it down for people really good is like, for a long time we've been fishing for steelhead on the North Coast, just normal steelhead fishing, and the management of Fish and Wildlife was allowing us to fish, and we had some runs that were under escapement, and they were still just allowing us to go forward. So new management basically came in from the department and said, whoa, we got some problems here, and we need to really kind of start looking at these wild steelhead runs and how we're going to hold on to them and make sure they're still around. So I applaud them for that part. That's wonderful. But we went from like completely open boat fishing and doing all that stuff to all of a sudden super restrictive fishing, right? So it kind of really put everybody back on their heels. And in the process of that 2 years ago, we went from, knowing we were going to have a great season to all of a sudden we're not fishing out of our boats. We're fishing from the bank. A lot of people got X'd out of the fishery, so forth. So a bunch of us got together, a bunch of guides, a couple politicians, a bunch of people got together and said, hey, look, if this is the route we're going to go, we need to put something together that really ensures that as sportsmen, we can kind of know we're going to have a fishery. A lot of times we don't know until December 1, the fishery opens. December 1 is the beginning of steelhead season, and we think we're going to have a great season, and all of a sudden they come out and say, well, no, this is what your actual rules are. And like, how as a guide or a sportsman who's going to travel plans, all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden doesn't like, oh, wow, now I don't even get to go fishing, or they're closing it early, or, hey, we can only fish out of our boats, which for a lot of anglers, only off the bank, which for a lot of anglers kind of took them out of the fishery. So we basically worked with some legislators. They got a budget proviso passed. The budget proviso was passed, and it gave the state, I think, $300,000 to formulate a plan moving forward. And so part of our ask in the proviso was to create an ad hoc group, put together a group of stakeholders that can look at the fishery and plan on how not only are we going to set up our fishing opportunities, but look at recovering some of these steelhead populations and so forth. But the scope of the work is really much larger than the time frame we have to do it in. So if we're really going to do a full recovery plan, it's going to take way longer. We have to have this to the legislature by December. So to really do a full recovery plan really isn't even in the cards, because there's no way we can process all the information, dig into the weeds as deep as we need to. So what we need to provide the legislator is basically just where are we, what are we missing in managing these steelhead runs? What are we missing? And how can we move forward to not only help recover the fish, but also establish some solid fishing opportunities in these depressed times, right? Now, we know our ocean conditions are getting better. So as ocean conditions get better, we're going to have more opportunities. We're going to have a little bit better, right? Our forecast, hopefully our runs get a little bit larger. It's going to open things up a little bit. But in the meantime, what do we do in there where we can get some opportunity with that? There's a lot of us that feel like there's opportunity there as sportsmen that we should be able to have. And we have to figure out how we can do that going forward. So,
so what's your response to, because one of the biggest things I see, and I see this thrown around, even all these posts and stuff that I've made recently, and I've gotten pretty loud and vocal about it, I get a lot of the comments, well, you're just a selfish sport fisherman. All you want to do is catch these fish. You don't really care about these fish. You don't want to see these fish in the future. Why can't you just sacrifice for 10 years and not mess with these fish? And I see that comment a lot.
So my response to that is that the idea, like, why don't you sacrifice and give up 10 years, right? That's the comment. Mm-hmm. Well, where's all your advocates going to go? Like, pretty soon people just stop fishing for them, and there's nobody now to fight for them. All your advocates go away, right? You need to keep people engaged. Closing fisheries isn't going to keep people engaged. It's just going to chase them away.
And then on top of that, too, like they've closed down lots of rivers where you can't fish winter steelhead across the state. And there's just because they've closed those fisheries, doesn't mean that stock has recovered in any way, shape, or form. Like
Correct.
There is nothing proven. Like, and I can give examples from the Wind River. I can give examples from Hood River. I can give examples from the Columbia River Basin. But across these places where the entire Puget Sound, like the sport fishing is not the problem, even though they do apply these mortality rates, and we can get into that here in a little bit. But this is the sacrifice of closing a fishery for 10 years. Especially, and keep in mind, guys, most of this fishery that we're talking about is catch and release. I mean, a vast majority that some of the earlier stocks that they closed us out of, for harvesting hatchery fish, obviously those went away too. And those hatchery fish are really only there for the table. They actually don't want those fish in the gravel. But regardless, like if you just close something, it doesn't come back. Assuming that the sport fishery is crushing these runs, they would have figured that out a long time ago. But now all of a sudden it's a management policy.
Well, that's kind of a little bit of the issue for a lot of us is like, show us the data that says that sport fishing is attributing to the decline of the steelhead population.
There's studies right now in Idaho that are saying otherwise, that are saying that it's meant, like we're talking 1 to 2% at best, which that is a percentage. There is an impact. I'm not going to say that there's not, but is that impact heavier than closing down a fishery for 10 years and losing, like you said, all your advocates, your participants in the fishery, the industry itself around those fisheries? Is it worth losing it for the 1 to 2%? And keeping in mind that really at the end of the day, Bob and I and Marlon and everybody here probably listening to this podcast, we want those fish probably more than anybody else in the state.
Right. Yeah. So you look at that. It's like 2 to 3%, I think, is what the Idaho study said. There's one being done on the Cowlitz right now. Mm-hmm. It's not quite finished, but I've heard the preliminary numbers are very similar.
Well, because
so we apply a 10% mortality rate to our fish. And so maybe hopefully with both those studies and out of this ad hoc group, we can look at that and say, here's 2 studies that show that sport fishing is only really getting a 2 or 3%. So can we adjust that 10% maybe down to 5%? Now all of a sudden that changes our impacts on a fishery, which then would change our fishing opportunities.
But let's talk about the studies that they're choosing to ignore. Studies that are being done in real time every single year on the snake, on the Wilson, on the Siletz. And these are broodstock studies where these fish are being handled 10 times more aggressively than any sport guy catching and landing them. They're being all sport caught, and they're being held long-term, spawned and released. And they know that exact mortality rate on fish that are handled, honestly, 5 times, 10 times rougher than a sport guy catching one, getting a picture on the bank and letting them go.
Right.
And they know that number, and those studies are there, and those numbers are there, and they're choosing not to look at those.
Right. We also had it on the Snyder Creek program. I mean, I was super involved in that, and for years.
How many fish died in that thing?
30 years of collecting, 20 to 50 fish a season, and our mortality was nil.
There you go.
In that.
So, I mean, there's real case examples, and that's why, and so going back to, like, we're talking about, where we're going to try to go with this group. But like, I'm going to go back to one of those questions, like, how was this group formed and the people that were put on it? Like, and does those people that are on this group and in this group represent all the stakeholders in the state of Washington for steelhead?
So basically they formed the ad hoc group. They put out basically a message out to the public everywhere that this group's going to be there. And anybody that wants to be involved in the group basically could put their application in, their resume for why they think they should be on the group. And then once they received all those, then they picked the people. They basically grab all the people that either wrote a good resume and or kind of like tried to separate people out a little bit, right? So, a couple of guides, a couple of conservation ones, a couple of scientists, a couple of regular sport fishermen, so forth. Try to get as broad a spectrum as they can and get in that. Only thing I can say is that, I mean, there's not one person on that organization, on that ad hoc group, that isn't absolutely passionate about wild steelhead. Now, we might all have different opinions on how we should recover them or what a sport fishery should look like. no doubt about it, right? We all have that. I'm hoping that we can all work together and come up with something that's going to fit everybody. But it's part of that process is that, and that's why I was on the Addict Show here a couple weeks ago, and why I'm here again today is to let people know, like, the 12 people on this panel are not the deciding factor of what's going to happen for steelhead. We're just an advocate for the fish, and then we go back to our constituents and tell them, like, here's what's happening, and you need to voice your opinion. If you have an opinion on what you think should be done, then you need to do that.
And you need to be signing in and listening to the meetings and commenting.
If you listen to the show or the meeting, and maybe there's a way that we're talking about things, and guaranteed you're going to hear different approaches from each person in the group. And hopefully we come to a consensus in the middle as to what's best for the fish and the fishermen. But your voice is really important for the sportsman, any sportsman, to get on there and tell people, like, hey, I agree with this approach, or I agree with this approach, or this is what this means to me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? For a lot of people, we talk about the fish, but the reality of it is hardcore steelheaders are different than any other fisherman out there, right? Why do we go out there and spend days in the ice, cold, freezing hands?
Oh, you're talking the passionate of the passionate.
You're chasing this elusive fish, right?
Yeah.
You take that away from people, and it's like there's people out there that will mentally just go nuts.
They're lost.
Because they can't go out there and do that, right? And so it's super important that we hold on to some fishing opportunities for all these folks to go do that.
And so in this group is supposed to be this representative sample, like you said, of passionate steelhead anglers. And you're talking that next week, you guys are going to be talking Chehalis Basin. You're going to start delving into that. Who's on that group that's from that area, or steelheaders from that area, or who represents, like, a guide or a fisherman from that area? Is there anybody even on there?
The only person, there's one sport angler from Olympia.
But we're not talking Chehalis Basin, though.
Nobody in the Chehalis Basin that I'm aware of. Most of the folks are either North Coast, inside of the coast,
Olympia, Seattle. But no one there that lives, breathes, eats, guides, fishes, steelhead.
Not that I'm aware of.
Basin.
To be honest with you, I don't really know where all these folks live that are on there.
Right.
I mean, I've worked with most of them, but I really don't know their physical address.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Because my thought about this group being this representative sample of steelhead anglers would represent people from the area, businesses from the area as well. And I mean, if there's that piece missing, then it doesn't seem like it's getting, the interests of those fishermen and the interests of those people trying to make, like I said, we're not all greedy fishermen. People that live in that area want those fish more than anything else right now, especially in the wintertime.
Yeah. I've been doing my homework. I mean, I sat on almost every single North of Falcon meeting, including all of Grays Harbor, which I don't fish.
Yeah.
But I sat on every North of Falcon meeting there to listen to their voice, to listen to their hearts about their salmon fisheries, and have reached out to some of those folks. And I have several, not only guide friends, but then clients who that's their home waters where they live there. Mm-hmm. So I've been talking to those people regularly to get a feel for how they feel and things they're concerned about and things they would like to see and so forth from the Chehalis Basin. I'm pretty knowledgeable about it, but I don't have the...
But like I said, I
can't tell where those fish spawn. Where if you ask me in the Solduck or the Bogashoo or Clow, or the North Coast, I can tell you what rock they're behind, and where they're going to spawn and when they're going to spawn. Everything. Yeah. I don't have that knowledge on the Chehalis system, so I have been reaching out to people to really find out about, really dig into that to help my decision making and or help my comments in this aspect.
So this next meeting on the 28th at 6, I'm assuming?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
4 to 6.
4 to 6 is going to be the first time where you guys are going to delve into some of these areas and start kind of maybe figuring out what should and shouldn't happen. And are we talking as far as whether there should be hatchery stock, should there be new programs implemented, or is it going to be kind of like, okay, here's the deck.
I'm sure those idiots will talk about getting rid of hatchery fish for sure.
Well, I mean, that's
So I don't
That's
know.
the only
like,
card in the book
so
for them. But what I'm asking is like, is this like something where they're going to start doing like with the Quicksilver program, where they start like figuring out like what they want to do within the basins? I mean,
there obviously is going to be some discussion surrounding that, but the reality of it is that in the short time frame that we have to come back to the legislation with a look at this stuff, my eyes, what I see is we can only address the needs and the tools necessary to manage these fisheries and these and our fishing opportunities successfully.
As is.
Yes.
So you're not
like
talking like in the future, like we need to do these programs here. We need to cut these. You're not.
There probably going to be some discussion like that.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. There's going to be some opinions that think that this is what they should do.
Yeah.
And like I said, my opinion is we don't have the time to delve into that deep in the grass.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
So
I'm like, how are you doing this in a
complex
2-hour meeting?
You can't. Like
with no representation from anybody in the Chehalis.
Chehalis would need like a year.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It would need a year of meetings.
Yeah, you're talking about so many different
And you would
rivers.
you would have to have people involved from there. You'd have to have the tribes involved. Right?
Where's the tribes on all this?
You have to have the tribes involved in it if we're going to actually talk about a recovery plan for the Chehalis system.
No kidding.
So we can't really...
I didn't even think of that.
We can't really get in there and dig into the weeds and come up with a recovery plan in one meeting. What we can do is identify some needs, right? So one of the needs, like in the Chehalis system, right, is there is zero monitoring going on. Zero. So it means there's no fish checkers.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing. So nothing going on there. So as a fishery for sportsmen, they don't know how many fish the sportsmen are catching, or how many they're releasing. They don't know anything, right?
Bob.
So
Bob,
having that in there is important. So basically, you go to legislation. This is a need. If we're going to manage this fishery correctly, this is one of the needs. The other needs might be, hey, we need to really look at broodstock programs to help these fish get going, right? So that would be a need. So we got to identify some.
Let me back you up on one of those needs, because guides are doing logbooks now, so they should have some pretty robust creel data for a lot of sportsmen in that area if the season's open.
Correct, and that was brought up, so that was brought up in our last meeting that we had that available, and so we're sharing that data that we have from the guides now. So as that expands and as we get more involvement in that will help. That's one of the things that will help. But so that's just my take on this group is all we really can do is identify
problems. Well, everybody can identify
needs.
Here's the problem,
and put them on a spectrum of what's most important to help.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. The Chehalis Basin is not meeting wild escapement, so everything's closing down. Meanwhile, places with broodstock programs are meeting escapement excellently
for 20 years.
For 22 years.
Right.
So really, I can identify your needs right there, and we can put a check on this box and move on.
So
and if they even bring up the money or the volunteerism for sportsmen, like I know Marlon and I got that. So take that to your meeting on the 28th.
So I've had some conversations recently with some departmental people who have now addressed their opinion of like, we're not against broodstock programs, and so we would like to talk about them, and they've been talking to Oregon and finding out about their programs, and that they're
20 years later.
A lot of the Oregon-based programs are basically anglers and public facilitated, correct?
Yep.
And so Washington's been talking to Oregon
but
about
so
how does that
guys's
work and all that.
That's
kind of
what your guys's was, right? The Snyder one.
It was, yeah. The state basically raised our fish as fry.
That's what they do.
So they helped us with that.
Yep.
Then we did all of the raising of the fish, feeding of the fish. We paid for the fish. Where they're all sport angler caught. They were all sport angler transferred from river to the ponds at the hatchery and so forth. So, but the good news is, like, for a long time we've been talking broodstock programs, and it's been no. Now I think the seal's been broke a little bit to where, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this and let's work on it.
I absolutely
and think
laugh
about
at
it.
this because it's like the seal's been broken, but do they live under a rock? like, I don't mean to be offensive, but for heaven's sakes, do you think a broodstock program, do you think robust, good sport? I mean, if you put out the call for, like, when you talk about this Chehalis Basin, as far as needs and wants, say we need a broodstock program in the hump tulips, we need it in the Wainuchi, we need it in the Satsop. I guess you guys had one in the Satsop, or
they're still doing one there, but it's small. And that was one of the things I talked about with the departmental person was, you know, doing a broodstock program where you raise 25,000 or 50,000 smolts.
It's something.
It's nothing.
It's nothing, but keep in mind, like the Wilson, I'll just say
they put 150,
it's like
right?
They do 120.
Right.
All they need.
So, but there's a point of return.
Yeah.
To where you do. Right. When we had the Senator Creek program, it was 100,000.
There you go.
We volunteered to go
and
to 50.
You guys went nuts.
We volunteered to go down to 50 because we used to kill 30 wild steelhead. I mean, you killed 2 wild steelhead a day back in my early days.
Oh, fish. Oh, yeah.
As sportsmen, we used to do that.
Not in this program.
No. Yeah. We used to kill 2 wild steelhead a day.
Yeah, that was just fishing regulations.
And then we went to 10 a year. Mm-hmm. Then we went to 5 a year. Then we went down to 1 a year.
Yeah.
And in that process, there was the concern raised not only by the co-managers, by the department also, was, okay, we're taking less wild steelhead out of the system. The whole idea of Snyder Creek was to help build the system. So if we're taking less wild fish out, adding way more in maybe not necessarily be the best thing,
right?
And allow these wild fish to do their thing, right? So we thought, okay, that's no problem.
But
so we reduced it to 50,000. We also saw our return just fall dramatically.
Well,
we went back to 100,000, and all of a sudden our return.
But there's all this intrinsic stuff too. Like, I mean, you guys are lowering your numbers down, but let's be honest. I mean, because every report I listen to in the town halls talk about, like, you know, the climate change and pushing their habitat further north. I mean, the cards are, I mean, not just the sport process with whether we're broodstocking or whether we're catching and killing. I mean, take all that out of the mix. Like, the cards are stacked against. There's all these other different things that are stacked against them. So even though you guys were trying to do the right thing on reducing that broodstock as you weren't killing the wilds, all these other things were happening. And now, now we're here.
Right.
And now basically we need those back.
But I also think that the reason the soul duck is still as strong as it is,
it's because
for the 30 years of broodstocking that we did, when the other runs around us have fallen down.
How long do you think that'll last? I mean, it's still going kind of down too. It's starting to suffer from those effects.
It's going down a little bit, but I think a little bit of that had to do with more of what's happened in the ocean for the last 4 or 5 years. Right now, the ocean's kind of going back the other direction, and we had a massive hatchery return this year.
Oh,
which is really good news.
Yep.
And that's typically your 1-year-old fish. So next year's wild runs should also show a pretty good uptick.
Great time to start a broodstock program. Tell people real fast what can they do on this April 28th meeting to help not change the minds. I'm not going to say change the minds, but help basically advocate for the steelhead in any way they choose to see fit, whether it be, hey, don't fish for 10 years, guys, which we already talked about, or, hey, maybe try putting a broodstock program, or, hey, I got $20, I'll throw it in the pot. Like, what can people do? And then we need to get to a live feed.
You know, I think, first of all, is listen to the meeting. Go there and get a flair for what's being talked about. And then voice your passion and your heart for what you feel you would like to see happen with our steelhead runs, and what you would like to see, right? Voice your opinion. If you think broodstock programs are what you would like to see, then talk about that. You know, if you have an idea of what kind of a fishery you'd like to see, talk about that. You know, just know that, like, in the Chehalis system, that's the one that is the big one, right? Because, you know, the last 5 years, it's been like 2,000 fish under escapement.
Scary.
So not just a little bit under escapement, dramatically under escapement, right?
Yeah.
So we need to help get that system back going, and a good recovery plan would be good. And would broodstock be good? I think it would.
And broodstock not to kill fish too, like broodstock with some vent clips so there can't be harvest on these fish. Like actually using my personal opinion, use a broodstock program to help bolster numbers and not just so greedy fishermen can slaughter them.
I 100% agree. I am not into mining wild fish to make hatchery fish.
No.
That's not a broodstock to me.
Nope.
A broodstock is just like
once you get
just like our wolf populations, where wolf populations are extinct, we brought wolves back in. We helped get them going. Right, we've done this with a whole pile of species.
Yeah,
it's time we do it for steelhead and some of our salmon runs. It's the same thing, right?
Well, it's happening all over in the Upper Columbia. Look at these coho runs we got. Those all came from broodstock hatchery programs.
Yep.
All of them.
We need to help them get them over the hump, and that would do that.
Thank you, Bob, for coming in today. We appreciate you guys. That meeting is
I barely said anything because I was just like sitting here and like just trying to soak it all in, get all.
It's so important, guys. I mean, everything he's saying gives you guys. Hopefully, you guys got some background from this. Please participate in the April 28th. Listen, and like I said, if anything,
I'm going to make sure that I put some links out because I know people are going to ask. So I'll have some links in the description. I'll have some links everywhere so you guys understand where to go. And I think if you want to make a comment, you have to do that ahead of time. You have to actually get on there and say, I want to make a comment. You have to fill out a thing. You have to put your name. Like, you can't just get on there and make a comment from how I understand it. So
it's also a very complicated,
right?
It's a very complex situation, and people need to be, I would say, try to go into these meetings open-minded and listen to everybody, right? You may not necessarily agree with the people on the other side of the table, but I'm telling you what, they're not dumb. They're scientists. They're smart. They have a passion. May not be your opinion, but it is theirs, and it's a valued opinion, and they do have some good things. So hopefully we can all just come together and come up with a good plan going forward that will kind of fit everybody.
Bob, I want you to leave that meeting. I want you to have them say, Marlon, we're going to do a broodstock program. We need $200,000 and we need all the anglers in the world to catch them. And we'll say, okay. And we'll get them that. So you do that for us on the 28th.
I'm working
Get that done. I'm
working
totally
on
kidding,
it.
guys.
We're having some meetings. I got a meeting coming up soon. So
beautiful, Bob. Bob, thanks again for coming. We will have you again. You know what, guys? We're going to beat this thing to death. We have to.
We're going to continue to talk about it. And there's some other issues going on in Oregon and some other areas that we're going to be talking about as well. So thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate every single one of you. Do not forget, make sure you guys take advantage of the ADX15 code on FilletAway's website. And drop some comments. We're on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. So we'll see you guys on the river.
Thanks, guys.